I'm Rachael Degar, and this is the Truth About Aging podcast. Today I'm joined by patient zero, CEO of Bio Viva, Liz Parrish. She was the first person ever to undergo a telomerase gene therapy treatment. Today we talk about the future of longevity, gene therapy, and where we can go to find the best treatments to live longer as our healthier selves. Enjoy.
Join me and experts from all over the globe sharing knowledge with you about living healthy longer, smarter, fitter and happier. Scientists, doctors, researchers and biohackers. You'll learn everything here about how to be your best you. I'm Rachael Degar. Welcome to the Truth About Aging.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me on The Truth About Aging. I'm so pleased to welcome our guest, Liz Parrish. Liz is a biotech entrepreneur and she's the CEO of Bio Viva Sciences, which is a company focused on developing gene therapies for age-related diseases. She gained public attention in 2015 for her controversial decision to undergo experimental gene therapy treatments to potentially reverse the effects of aging and extend her lifespan. She's also a mother and an outspoken advocate of the right of the individual to participate in medical trials where the risk of doing nothing outweighs the risk of therapy. I love that. Liz, hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Let me just jump in first because you are, we've known each other for some time now. You are so passionate. You obviously go above and beyond. What made you interested in anti-aging and longevity in the first place? How did you start?
Well, I think I started where a whole bunch of people who are new to this area are probably right now, and that is not considering biological aging a disease and just sort of going through my life and enjoying myself and expecting that I would live maybe some 80 years if I was lucky, and then I would die and hopefully see my grandkids before then. That is where most of the world's perception actually sits about aging, and that's where I was. I got lucky in 2011. I was offered a position in a nonprofit organization that was working on the advocacy of the use of stem cells. And I sort of fell in love with the genetics behind stem cells. I can't explain it to you besides it just became a super passion. And I started meeting with epigeneticists. And so those are scientists that basically study gene expression. And what I learned is, of course, I knew every cell in your body has the blueprint for you. Every cell that has your genes in it have the same genes, but they express differently in different cells. And so that's why a stem cell has this incredible ability to regenerate tissue. And a somatic cell in your nose may have the ability to help you smell, but it basically will die young and it can't really repair the tissue around it. So all your cells are specialized and they're all special. So these genetics sort of drove me to look deeper and see what was happening in the gene therapy space. And I was impressed, but it really didn't still apply to my life until 2013. My son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And type 1 diabetes is not like type 2. It can't be managed with diet and exercise. It is literally an immune system dysfunction, and you are dying. And I was just thrown into the world of Children's Hospital and seeing sick children. And
that's a shock.
Yeah, it's a shock.
What would you expect as a mother to
it is
hold?
It's mind-shattering, Rachael. I mean, as a mother, I'm sure you can imagine. It's literally mind-shattering. And I had learned about all of these technologies that had curative effects in some of the diseases, similar to some of the diseases I was seeing there. I mean, even while you're in Children's Hospital, there are codings happening where children are dying. So when I started pressing the medical doctors and the nurses to what sort of things they had available in genetics or stem cells or biobanking of his pancreas, the cells that were still functioning, they basically looked at me as if I was kind of crazy and said that, that was experimental medicine and that it wasn't used in children.
And you're
And
saying, I know what your brain is doing. Actually, I want the best and I want everything. I want to do what I can. Just because it's not in the system doesn't mean I don't want it for my child.
exactly. I'm thinking we're letting kids die, and you're telling me that this is experimental medicine. Are you kidding me? Like, what is worse, being part of an experiment that might save your life or dying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that really is my catalyst. That when I started in this industry, the first aging conference I went to was because it had the professor of genetics from Harvard, and they were speaking on genetics. And I was just absolutely possessed that I must go to that conference and speak to these people. And that's the beginning of everything.
Yeah, good for you. It's amazing. Sometimes, and I feel like you're really privileged, like some of the people that we meet, and they've got like 10 degrees and won Nobel Prizes and, that sort of thing. But it is really interesting sometimes, people who find themselves in this kind of genre through emotion, and just through a curiosity and a seeking of a better world, rather than a PhD. And I think it's
Yeah,
a nice
I
balance.
think there are so many people out there that are hopefully watching this and will watch this that really think that they're a low value person. And trust me, when I started breaking into this industry, I heard it. I had people tell me I wasn't qualified. I had people, essentially shame me for even trying. I still have that to this day. The media will try to do that. Oh no, girl, boy, don't you stop, because you're exactly what's needed. If you're passionate and there's a problem out there, there are already a bunch of PhDs. There's a bunch of medical doctors who can do new and experimental and innovative medicine. What they need is you. So anyone who's listening, do not let the world get you down, and don't let your family get you down too, because you are, Rachel, you are super supported. Your family is all part of what you do. Some of us live in a world in which our families were shocked and maybe didn't want us to do these things or didn't think that we were capable. And so for people listening, you need to have strength. You don't have to have self-esteem. Trust me, I know, but you need to have the strength and the will to just do what you need to do. Everyone's valuable.
Yeah. And Liz, you are crazy behind your message, which is what I love about you. Like, you don't just say it, you do it. You're known as patient zero. So for anyone listening who might not know this, Liz is one of these people with gumption. She doesn't just say this is what you should be doing and then sits around waiting for someone else to do it. So Liz was patient zero and put herself through and essentially untested gene therapy experience. Can you tell us about that? Like, your thoughts when you were leading into it? Were there any fears? What did that look like for you?
Well, after I learned about treating aging and how a bunch of these genes, as a matter of fact, every one of the genes that we choose at our company are a gene that can treat biological aging and childhood disease. And when I realized that these gene therapies could maybe have a curative effect for billions of people, we just really felt that it was an imperative that these were used in humans. And when we looked at the landscape, there wasn't really any ethical way to test them in anyone else. And I said, well, I would certainly do that. But let's talk about the first two genes I've done, because I did two more different gene therapies after. And the first one is your darling, telomerase reverse transcriptase. And the scientist that has worked a lot on your product as well, Bill Andrews of Sierra Sciences, I was introduced to him after that first aging conference, and he told me how the telomere length is actually associated not only with aging, but with a bunch of maladies that happen throughout our life, including early onset childhood diseases. and even things like the inability for women in their childbearing years to conceive. So he got me really excited about this one gene that could potentially help, well, what was then emerging on 8 billion people, we've surpassed that now, live longer and healthier. And the other gene was brought to me by the medical doctor who I started the company with. It is called follistatin, and it increases your muscle mass and helps you with metabolic dysfunction. So it could help people live stronger, longer, and healthier. So the thinking behind that was that follistatin had been in human studies. It had been studied with Becker's muscular dystrophy at that point. So it had been through safety and efficacy. It looked pretty great. Telomerase reverse transcriptase had reversed signs of aging and extended the life of mice, a lot of times. Even my company has done it since we started. And it just was such a low-hanging fruit to making the world a better place. So I worked with a couple of people, and we decided that I would be patient zero, that I understood the risk fully, that I was willing to die to see a cure for the rest of the world.
Amazing.
And we embarked, and from a distance, it looks really shiny and cool and like a great decision. At the time, it was pretty nerve-wracking and interesting, and we told very few people because we didn't want someone to shut us down to stop us from trying.
Yeah, I think you're right to, like, the theory behind, telomerase has been proven over and over and over again, and it's already something within your body, so it does, as you say, it's like the low-hanging fruit of what you can do. Like, your body will recognize it, you know what it will do with it, there's nothing negative it can do with it, but you still have to make that into a medical procedure.
Yeah.
And that's like the main experiment, isn't it? How to get that medical procedure right.
And we had to make the drug itself, which was very cost prohibitive. And that gene therapy I've taken twice. I think that because the way that gene therapy works, it's very difficult for gene therapy to transfect all the cells of your body. Now, some genes, it doesn't matter. Follistatin, Clotho, some of the other genes that we look at to treat aging, we can literally just pack it into your arm and it would have a benefit systemically. Telomerase reverse transcriptase is a special character, and it would figure that it would be so damn difficult, being that it's probably the most powerful single gene in all of aging. And it has to be in the cell.
Yeah.
And it affects only the cell that it's in, maybe neighboring cells, probably not. And so with gene therapy, we can transfect about 20% of the body at a time, and then so we assume that this would probably need to be done every 5 or so years, and that's what I've done and will continue to do, and I continue to see benefits from the multiplicity of treatments.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask, actually, Liz. And so this is it's a very silly thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because you look amazing, and it's one of those, often what's on the inside is coming out on the outside, so all aesthetics apart, not just being girly, but you look incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's a hard question because obviously these last 10 years you've had gene therapies. You've never been you without these gene therapies. But do you feel that it has had a really big impact on your longevity?
I'm hoping that it does. Now, a human is a long-lived species, so it's a really difficult one, right? We're not like mice. You can't find out in 2 years if we've lengthened our lifespan, but my biomarkers look great. I feel healthy. There's a slew of issues that I don't have anymore. Like if I didn't drink enough water, I had so much kidney pain before my treatment. And I have to be careful that I'm not overselling the treatment, but I'm telling you, I don't have that anymore at all. I don't have general aches and pains. I can keep up. I mean, I go hiking with my son. We go for miles up mountains, and I do rest more than him. I mean, he is 20, and but I mean, I don't have all the problems that I feel like my friends are starting to complain about with their knees and all of that. So I mean, this is This is a therapy, whether topically as you're selling it or internally as I am selling it. I guess selling it. Our company will eventually sell it. That I think that people will take at a very young age, and it will basically stave off the ravages of aging from a much earlier age than what would be considered safe to use it now. Probably at 25 is when people will be giving these gene therapies.
It will get to a stage where people don't understand what aging is, and won't that be amazing?
Yeah.
Like they'll look at us and we'll be great grandparents and say, oh no, gosh, I remember waking up in the morning and not wanting to get out of bed, or my back hurt or my knee hurt, or I think I'm the last one of my friends left who can sit on the ground cross-legged. In fact, that's my kind of go-to. I even sit on my office chair with my legs cross-legged, and they look at me and go, that's just not normal. I'm like, oh really? But it's my normal, and I haven't done a telomerase gene therapy, but that's what aging is. And I guess your hope for doing this gene therapy was that in a few generations time people wouldn't understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want you and I to be in a room with our children and our grandchildren and our great grandchildren in the future, because there is a lot of value to that, value that I didn't know before my son's diagnosis, value of life that I did not have, a value in which I thought, oh well, I die at 85 or something, and thought that was okay. But I want us to all stand in the same room and not be able to differentiate the age of one another, be able to enjoy our time with each other. Hell, why would we be standing in a room? We'll be out water skiing or hiking or playing tennis with them. We'll be picnicking and enjoying and making memories.
Yeah. There's a lot of advice, like my mum said to me years ago, and she suffers from autoimmune diseases, and she sort of said, I wish I hadn't listened to the generations above her, that you work hard, you put your money away, you save it, you enjoy your retirement. See, well, I want to do some traveling now, but it's more difficult, And she said, why did I listen? Why did that seem to make sense at the time? Whereas I think we've kind of got it a bit more right. People aren't saving their money for their retirement, and we do get out, we do live a lot more. And perhaps it's that spark and that passion for life which has begun this movement. We've all gone, actually, we really do like life.
It's really, and back then, I mean, retirement was set at an age in which 50% of the population got there. When it was first set, it was less than 50%. And so the reason that people couldn't wait to retire, because it meant that they had life after work. And they essentially had such a short period of time. You trained in something, you did that your entire life, and then you have this moment of retirement. Well, now some people are living almost twice the retirement age, right? In the lower end of retirement. And that is mostly in bad health.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely how we don't want to live in the future. But there's something more important what you said, and I wanted to get to that. And it's called the law of diminishing returns. So today, we have essentially life and mortality rates. And even though children die, it's not really enough to hit the rate very much. So think about most of the population, almost 100% of the population lives to about, let's say, the age of, I think 35 is when it starts to turn, but 45, it starts to turn more sharply. And that's why when people say, oh my God, I couldn't believe my friend died at 45, 48, 49, I'm like, well, you've never seen a death curve. So you're going along, and then this curve goes down, and then it goes down to the bottleneck, which we think is around 120 right now. And but this law of diminishing returns isn't just your friends dying, it's your body getting sick. And so now you've gone and saved up a bunch of money to travel, and you can't travel in some cases, or you can only travel to certain places with certain access to certain amenities because you can't climb stairs, or you have to pay double, you need someone to go with you because of your health. And though that is the diminishing returns that come with regular aging. And so, here you've saved all this money, as you've just mentioned, and now you're left with not a lot that you can do. not anything near what you could do when you were healthy.
Mm. Yeah. And it's you don't think about that when you're 30 because you haven't felt aging yet. So Liz, you've gone and done 2 more gene therapies since your original ones a decade ago.
Mhm.
Did you change much in terms of administration or dosage or because that's a massive learning curve, isn't it? You know, I mean the first time you did it, that was so experimental. And
Yeah.
then the second time, am I right to assume you basically only had your data points still? Because you haven't got other people out there doing all these gene therapies. So you're only working on your own.
Actually, there are. So
Knowledge.
now medical tourism is a burgeoning area. It's an area which, if you have a lot of money and know how, you can actually participate in it. It's not for everyone, but it is actually cheaper than any of the regulated gene therapies. So medical tourism by far is a cheaper way to go, but too expensive for most people. So my company is working on making these gene therapies affordable. But where do we go from where I was, and how do you test new gene therapies if you've already tested gene therapies? Because I think that was your question. So we started expanding into other aging related gene therapies, and they're for different reasons. So telomerase reverse transcriptase is the only one that we know that can lengthen telomeres. So it's the biggest bang for your buck if you were going to do one gene therapy or one drug that could do one thing to your aging. You would want to lengthen your
Shortest
telomeres.
stick of dynamite.
Yeah, because it's going to help you live long enough to see affordable treatments in all of the other therapies. Follistatin, as I already mentioned, is a muscle mass strengthener and helps against metabolic disorder, although we found that telomerase worked better against metabolic disorder in our mouse study. We have one that's called PGC1 alpha, and it has everything to do with the energy in your cells. And so it not only helps your body create more mitochondria, but the mitochondria are more robust, which means they create more energy. And so this is a
Amazing.
gene.
I must admit, I hadn't heard that you were doing that. That's great.
Yeah. So all of these genes are human genes. So they're genes that you already have. So there's nothing weird going on here. This is a gene that is upregulated when you exercise. So it might be great for things like obesity. So, why do people who are 270 pounds just not get off their butt and go do something? It's because it's really hard for them.
Mm.
It's hard to move a big body. I mean, maybe actually that's not even a fair number. Maybe I'm thinking 360 pounds. It's hard to move your body if you're grossly obese.
And but
And
it's a vicious cycle too, because you're not moving, you don't have oxygen, your brain isn't happy.
oh, you have to move. You have to
Yeah.
move. So you're telling them get up and move. But if there was a way to help people, this gene might be one of those. It also could help you if you were very athletic and you wanted to increase your performance. And as we age, mitochondrial dysfunction just so happens to be one of the hallmarks of aging. And it's why when you see little old ladies at the store, because mostly people in this age group, men are already dead. Little old ladies, they're moving so slow with their shopping cart. It's not because, well, they really are thinking more slowly too, because their mitochondria do not work well. They have very little cellular energy. It's hard for them to doing those things. It's kind of like you when you're really sick and you have the super flu and you're just really slow because your whole body is just like, ugh. But so that one helps with mitochondrial dysfunction. And then the fourth one that we have is called Clotho. And actually, just a couple of days ago, a study came out of non-human primates with Clotho, and it showed that when they use Clotho to treat the chronic kidney disease of non-human primates, it increased their cognitive function. And this was already known in mice. And so it's a gene that we use for dementia.
Mm-hmm. Funny, I've heard of Clotho because there are some skincare ingredients that purport to help switch the Clotho gene on, being an anti-aging gene, even topically. So it's but if you can do something from the inside out, that's always preferable because then you get so many more benefits from it, right?
Okay, I love your skin cream and I will definitely use that. But pills, oh my God, please. I cannot be a slave to the bottle. And these days, if you really want to keep up, girl, you have to have 30 or 40 bottles of pills. I got so many bottles of nutraceuticals around that people send me and they're like, you have to take this. And if you take them with the wrong ones, you get a stomachache. gene therapy is set it and forget it. You're going to take an injection,
That,
just a regular injection or an IV, or in the case of our dementia therapy, it's an intranasal injection. And then you're good for many years. Okay. 2 to 5 years is what we're hoping. And some of the gene therapies are lifetime expression. So you may not have to do them again. And that is so the future. And then just give me my cream to put on and I can be done. And that's what I love about it. I don't want to have to, I can't remember these things. I can't do prescriptions. I always mess it up.
yeah, but the thing is, back to what we were saying about loving life and being passionate about life. I don't want to stand around and have a 7-layer skincare routine and then have to take 50 supplements, because then that's the whole morning gone. You could have been out for your jog, your walk, even having a coffee with a friend and being social. It's
I know
that's what you want life to be.
And like, then people will say, hey, look, if you're taking these nutraceuticals, you got to take it with food, take it with this type of food. Don't take it with the other thing. And it's a lot. I mean, I would love to create a nutraceutical that was simple for people who can't afford gene therapy now. But the reason my long-term goal is for gene therapy is because if you talk to any doctor, their number one problem is getting their patients to take their prescriptions as prescribed, and prescriptions don't work for everyone. So the number to treat and the number to harm of the top 10 prescriptions, if you look at the Cochrane report, is shocking. I mean, it's literally shocking. A lot of people get sick from prescriptions because they're not a one-size-fits-all. Some people die taking their prescriptions as prescribed, like astronomical numbers every year. And some people are actually harmed by them. So, statins are a good example. They give 1 in 4 people type 2 diabetes, and they give 1 in 10 dementia. And the number is actually probably higher than that, because when you lower LDL, that's the fuel of the brain.
Yeah.
So,
And isn't it interesting that that's an okay fatality rate, that 1 in 10 people could get dementia, but yet why do you think the hesitancy is against, for example, a telomerase gene therapy, which is what's the discrepancy here?
Right. So first of all, if you're taking statins, don't stop taking them, because I said that because your doctor, you could be the person that, the one in many that it actually helps. Okay. Okay. The hesitancy is innovative medicine takes more money to regulate. Many of these old drugs are just basically small changes in molecules, molecular structure that gives the company the ability to patent them for another 10 years. And they're not much different. So those drugs cost less to get through the regulatory system. Innovative drugs have vastly been blocked. I mean, if you look at any of the social media against people who are doing innovative things, I mean, it's disruptive. Of course, there's going to be, I mean, the same people who own those companies own the media. If this is disrupting trillion-dollar industries, this is it. This is, in my case, it's using human genes that you already have, upregulating human genes that don't have a detrimental effect to your body. They have a beneficial effect without any of the side effects of old drugs. And you won't need those old drugs anymore.
It just makes much more sense, doesn't it? And I think we've almost been indoctrinated to believe it can't be real. Right?
Yes, we have, because I mean, Bill Andrews said one time, I said, why is this industry so difficult to get funding in? Well, actually, since then, Google has funded a couple $2 billion. Jeff Bezos has funded $3 billion into their own endeavors because they want to own the treatment. And that's why we always say, please invest in smaller companies. But I said, Bill, what is the deal? Because this is all science-based. This is all evidence-based technology. And he said, because it's a 4,000-year scam. I mean, since the Egyptian time, people were selling creams that, they would say would help you live younger and more youthfully. And the technology wasn't there. It probably did help. It was probably good to put some oils on your skin, right, when you're out in the sun baking every day. But the science wasn't anywhere near where it is now. And to show that, the reflection of that is, all of the serious, well-funded universities now have a regenerative medicine wing. Many of them have specialty aging research centers now where they look at all the same things that we look at, but they just will stay in research there. So you need companies to come forward to translate them to humans. And there is a risk. I mean, we can't say because a gene therapy worked in me to some extent and it worked in 150 other people, we can't say that that guarantees that it would be safe for everyone. But safer than many of the drugs on the market. Oh yeah, I think that we'll see overall that these are exponentially safer for most people than many of the drugs that are used today.
And so as CEO of Bio Viva, you spend a lot of your time, Liz, looking for investment and funding to further research, which is, I applaud you, because you need tenacity and you need to have so much strength and belief, and I know you do. So thank you for doing that, because you're doing it for all of us. If somebody wanted, because I know that you, well, not you personally, as an industry, and Bio Viva struggles with things that can be regulated here and can't be regulated there. And so how do you get around that? If I was to say, I really want all of these gene therapies, Liz, do I go and meet you in Fiji? Do I go somewhere else? Like, how are you actually administrating to people who want gene therapies?
So that's a good question. So Bio Viva cannot give gene therapies. It's illegal. We're a US company, but we work with companies who can. And it's called an investigator-led study. And what happens in that study, it's like using a drug for compassionate use. You meet with a doctor, and if they agree that for whatever condition that you're treating, you qualify, you can go to a country in which you can get access to a gene therapy by consent. And that means all parties are indemnified. There's no suing structure. There's no, it is, you are taking a chance, but with a doctor whom has done these therapies, and you're hoping to get a benefit. And a lot of people with the wherewithal and the finances, and especially who have scientific teams to assess risk for them, those are the people who are participating. So it's expensive, but not as expensive as the regulated drugs that we've seen in the US around gene therapies. And so far, so what we do, why do we know anything about this? We actually asked to assess the data. So one thing, we ask patients who are going to go through a system like that to let us know. And we will work with whatever medical tourism company that they're working with so that we can assess their data. And we have these qualifications that they have to do. There are certain preliminary pre-blood work, pre-testing, in some cases MRIs and things like that they have to do to qualify to work with us. And then they have to follow up, let us follow up with them and follow up and get their testing for the next 2 years minimum. And some people drop out because it's intensive, but not, I don't think, too intensive. I mean, they should want to know what these therapies are doing to their body. But a lot of people take the therapies, then they're like, I feel great and I don't want to do any testing anymore. Like I'm just rocking it. And that's really disappointing for us. So, because then we have dropout of the study and then we don't get to make papers around that. But what we do then is we make scientific papers of what happened in the people that we were able to follow for a reasonable amount of time. And, but I am talking to a group now who may, and I can't talk about it on this show, but they may be giving us access to a zone where Bio Viva can do clinical trials that are expedited. On the other hand, 2 other things. We've applied for a pre-IND in the United States, so we might get to do a clinical trial in the United States. So we're trying. We've got a second one that we're going to apply for after that one. And so we're waiting to hear back from the FDA now. They've got, I think, another week, and then they have to get us some paperwork, and then we will, basically you do it by paper. They haven't met in person with people, I think, since COVID. So they do it all by paper. But the second thing that you could do right now, and you don't even need $1 to do it in your pocket, you can go to bestchoicemedicine.com or bestchoicemedicine.org. I think that those are linked. And you can sign a petition that says that you believe and agree that terminally ill patients or patients with no other treatment for their disease should get pre-regulatory access to these therapies. And Bill Andrews also worked on that project with me. It's so imperative that innovative medicine has a way to get to people that's effective and affordable. And then in the future, we could bring drugs to the US FDA or other regulatory systems around the world in which already had human data, therefore de-risking their system and speeding up clinical trials.
And it's back to one of your initial comments of, is it worse to watch somebody dying or give them a chance of actually not just living, but reversing the condition that was destroying their lives? And look, I think there'll be some people that were just listening to you, Liz, who are a little bit surprised at how structured and regimented gene therapies are, because they're sort of thought of as so alternative and so fringe that there's probably people thinking, oh, it's some little back hut, where, and there's something shoved in and there's no doctors and it's all hush hush. But I don't know anyone whose doctor has ever prescribed them a medication and then said, I want to do regular checkups on you for 2 years to see how you're going, how this is affecting your body, if this is actually working. It's just so generalized. It's a one shoe fits all. Whereas what you're doing is you're actually really caring for a patient's entire well-being and entire body.
Yeah, it's a misconception that doing a study outside of the US means that you're basically cutting corners or doing something incredibly risky or not doing something evidence-based. We actually test more biomarkers than they do in a clinical trial. And not only that, we have seen some clinical trials in the US go dramatically wrong in the last few years because the US FDA, sorry, not to pick on them, but they did allow companies to give toxic doses of gene therapy, even though it was well known what the toxic dose of gene therapy was with AAV. So, you really need to bring in a special expertise to these areas, and you have to align it with value and evidence-based medicine. And it's a complete misconception that you cannot do that without working with the government. That's just not true.
And look, and I know some people are already thinking conspiratorially, did they allow an overdose to happen to make people scared of AAV? Because as you said, it would disrupt trillions of dollars of a 4,000-year-old industry. So,
well, I think what's more interesting than that is the high price of gene therapy right now. So this year, again, so we every year we see more gene therapies rolled out that are FDA approved. This year we got hemophilia A, a cure for hemophilia A, a cure for hemophilia B, and Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, all in 1 year, but all with a price tag of over $2 million. And in the last couple of years, we saw a cure for spinal muscular atrophy. But unless you have between $2 and $5 million, I don't know why there's such a varying cost, but it's between $2 and $5 million for you to get that therapy for your child. They die. They die if they don't have it, and that's not okay. So the only thing that I see that looks really ugly is these high prices. They're not necessary. The drugs shouldn't cost that much. I'm not a huge fan of profitability around health as it is. I think that we could make a lot of profitability around human enhancement in gene therapy, but there it is. The costs are too high, and people cannot afford them. And because of that, their children could die.
And so before I ask the next question, just remind us, Liz, what did you say? Is it bestchoice.com?
Best Choice Medicine.
Bestchoicemedicine.com.
Yeah.
That's where everyone can go when they're finished listening to you.
Sign the petition. Go sign the petition and say that, you demand access, and we'll be rolling the signers out to governments around the world. And I've already written a law. I've had it signed off by several people. One government's looking at it. Hopefully we'll have more governments. It was brand new just a couple of months ago. It is basically the BCM plan instituted into a law in which people could get access to these therapies. And the right try in the United States, people died fighting for the right to try. And that unfortunately only covers therapies that have at least been through phase 1 safety. As a matter of fact, they could have failed in safety. But as long as they've been through safety study, they could be used off-label for other conditions if the patient's family has the wherewithal to say, you're dying and now we need to somehow find a drug. I mean, how do you even do it? How do you even do it under that amount of stress? How do you do it if you weren't under that amount of stress? And then the drug company can say no, but Best Choice Medicine says, we'll indemnify all parties. There's no suing in this. If you have a terminal disease, you're going to die. We're going to give you the dignity. The number one stakeholder, the patient, we're going to give you the dignity to try new drugs that work better in animal models than anything on the market and see if we can cure your disease.
Amazing. Amazing. And it just does make sense that it's gene therapy. It's all within you anyway. You know, we're born into
this could cover other drugs. This could cover, like, the Best Choice Medicine could do gene, cell, tissue engineering, literally, like, we would pull out all of innovation, everything that would be for the best and the most elite today, but for anyone who needed it.
Amazing. Amazing. So Liz, are you optimistic over what will happen to the state of gene therapies and breakthrough advancements over the next 10 years?
Oh, yeah. I'm so happy, again, that the US FDA has worked so hard to get some drugs through to patients. Some of those drugs, like, for instance, hemophilia, that drug showed promise in 1997. And it took till 2023 to get it regulated. So they need to speed it up because people died in that time. Type 1 diabetes is starting to finally it saw its first cell therapy get regulated that very few people can get access to right now. But hopefully we'll be able to. And again, in that time, insulin has been the 6th most expensive liquid in the United States, and children died because their families couldn't afford access to it, and it cost pennies to make. And yet people died. People go to college and they made decisions that it was either buying food or buying insulin. Can you imagine?
Yeah. It's wrong that we are still in the countries that we live in with such abundance that there's still those choices having to be made.
It is unbelievable. And, you can talk to a business person. I'm an MBA, but when I'm talking about medicine and health, you're talking to a mother.
Yep.
I demand better for our children. I demand that in our lifespan, Rachel, that not only do we hopefully cure aging for ourselves, but at minimum, we don't leave the kids with the same diseases that we die from, because for decades, there's evidence that we don't need to, but because of overregulation now, medicine doesn't move the way it used to. If it moved this way before, we wouldn't have penicillin, we wouldn't have antibiotics, we wouldn't have the other antibiotics, we wouldn't have cesarean section. I mean, a whole bunch of people that you've met wouldn't be here because it moved more quickly. And we have to continue this expedition of innovative technology. It's not businesses trying to take advantage of people. It is trying to help you live longer and healthier now. The whole rudimentary basis of science has changed. We're not after the symptoms of Alzheimer's. We're not trying to make little minor tweaks. We're actually trying to cure it by reversing the aging in the cells. So you're as likely to have Alzheimer's at 87 as you were at 20.
Yeah. I love the way that you explain it and all of the science and evidence behind it too, Liz, because I think for a lot of people listening, it kind of takes out the weird factor of it, because it is new and it is kind of weird. It's like, and it is that, is it too good to be true kind of feeling, like.
Well, it's, we haven't cured all of aging yet. So, but we have enough tools and we have enough treatments to stave it off so we can get to every hallmark of aging and reverse it. And so, that's where we're at. So we're not done yet, but, people, just in the last couple of months, face it, these chat systems, these AI chat systems, like just totally blew people's socks off. They're like, oh my God, I can have a conversation with a computer now. But the thing is that biotech, your drugs could have knocked your socks off 2 decades ago. And they didn't, because they're regulated more strongly than those technologies are. And so, we could be in a land of abundance, but we've gone too slow. We've been too risk averse, and people have been too chained to their golden chain. All of the people who have had the power to make a difference, to ensure that these new and innovative medicines get to you, they make so much money and think that they're at the top of the food chain. They have forgot that they're dying of biological aging. And, this is the point where we're trying to turn them to look at this new technology and say, we must regulate this now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's over the years, every now and then Bill says to me, oh, wow, that billionaire died. I wonder of XYZ. I wonder why. I've got friends who've already cured that, and it is sort of just looking around and knowing what's out there. And, gosh, the thing with AI too, is if somebody was to get off this call and ask AI about a gene therapy, it's going to give them a whole lot of BS, because it gets its information from blogs and vlogs and articles and people who've read someone else's blog and decided to put it with their own angle on it. And we did an interesting experiment for our database where we actually interviewed AI and said, how can you tell the difference between fact and truth and a lie? And I said, I can't disseminate it. All I can do is tell you, or give you what is the majority of the information that I've found. And so
what is cool about it though is I've had several people, and even I asked them, how do we cure aging? And number one, telomerase reverse transcriptase.
Oh yeah.
That's like one of the number one, the Yamanaka factors, which are not quite ready for humans yet. It will literally, then it'll say, rapamycin shows some benefit, metformin maybe has had some benefit in certain cohorts, not really old people, but the sort of middle of the road people, to help them live longer and healthier. And then it does know some things, it just doesn't know at all, for sure.
How to assimilate them. Yeah. Well, there's hundreds of thousands of studies on telomerase now, and I think it's the one, as you said, that's where you'd start, and then you do all your other ones if you want to. But if you don't fix the telomerase problem, the other ones are sort of irrelevant, aren't they?
Yeah. Even the Yamanaka factors, we looked at a study, and it did increase the lifespan of mice, but minimally. You increase the lifespan much longer if you just lengthen the telomeres, which telomeres aren't even a mouse problem. That Bill says it is an issue because it probably helps with genomic stability rather. And it helps with maybe mitochondrial function. We showed that in our paper. And so we hope that more people show that in theirs. But it is the most rudimentary, biggest hit for a one gene dollar. But, since then, our company has become super interested in new vector deliveries. And so now we're trying to work with a larger vector delivery that has that's more immunogenic in mice and redosable, called CMV. And if we can get this great big behemoth working, we may be able to deliver all of these genes at one time in one treatment in one single dose.
Wow. And will that reduce the price of it? How much of the price is in the actual molecules that you're delivering, and how much is in the delivery system of it?
So once we are manufacturing and have manufacturing to the ability that they have with AAV. So AAV is a gene therapy delivery method. It's a very small vector. It can only deliver about 4.8 kb, which is in the cases of many things, that's all of the Yamanaka factors, but so that's great for those because they're very short sequences. But for telomerase reverse transcriptase, it actually has a bit of a hard time fitting. It does fit, but barely. So if we're interested in a multitude of genes, in order to really, not only give you lengthened telomeres, but geroprotectors and muscle enhancers and things like that, we need a bigger delivery method. And so with the CMV, it is probably 15 kb, which is 3 times as big, but then we can maybe get it up to 50 kb in the future, and that would be fantastic. That's still a research based statement, but that's what we're hoping, is to get a lot of bang for the buck. But so if it costs the same amount to make a therapy, if I wanted to give you all 4 of the genes that I've gotten, it would be 1/4 of the cost and 1/4 of the dose, hopefully even lower, because it has a pretty high transfection rate.
Yeah. So you're looking at a new delivery system, and are you allowed to tell us if there's any new genes that you're looking into at the moment?
Well, we can talk about the 4 because I've talked about them publicly already. And then we're looking at another few characters that are promising for your heart and other geroprotectors and maybe even regenerative factors. And I've got a new company that I'm working with called Telomerase, and it's a startup. So if you've got people out there looking to fund a startup, which comes at a much lower cost than an established company, we're looking to cure glaucoma first, and I should say glaucoma. I don't think it's glycoma. And it is with a gene that has a regenerative effect to nerves. And so it might be really beneficial in spinal injuries and other nerve damaged areas. And so we're really excited about that as well.
Right. It does. It all sounds exciting.
So there are a slew of genes that there is emerging basic research on, and these are the ones that we're really after. There are the known longevity genes, and those are the sets that we already work with. But we read every paper that comes out that we absolutely can get our hands upon, because there is emerging evidence of a new whole variety of genes that should be ready for humans, sooner than later.
We just learn more and more. Liz, I love receiving your newsletters. I have got them for so long now, though I don't even remember how I got them. So if people want to keep in touch with you and to sign up for your informative, so Liz is great. She shares like all the breakthroughs in gene therapies and things like that. So you don't have to sit on Google for half an hour before you get them. So for people who aren't already corresponding and communicating with you, tell us how they can join up with you.
Well, you can go to bioviva-science.com, and I think there's a place to sign up for the newsletter there. And then you can follow us on social media. So if you follow Bio Viva, you can follow my private accounts. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And I think I'm not so on Facebook. I don't share a lot of science papers because Bio Viva does all of that for me. But you can literally see the whole landscape of gene therapy and have your socks knocked off about what's actually happening and emerging. For instance, there's a cure coming for sickle cell anemia now. I mean, it's just, it's just so fantastic. And we just need them to be affordable.
Yeah, and it's not in mainstream media enough. People could probably tell you what one of the Kardashians wore yesterday, but didn't know about all these cures. So I really
if someone dies of gene therapy, probably everyone will know it, because that's how the media works. And so things have been really quiet. So that's a good sign. And there's just one cure after another coming out. And so unless those diseases afflict your family, you're not aware of it. When I did gene therapy in 2015, a lot of people said, oh, she couldn't have done it because gene therapy is hypothetical. It doesn't exist. And yet thousands of patients had taken gene therapies for monogenic diseases. And so it really kind of insulted all of those people, including
all
children.
of the advancements that are already there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Liz, you are inspiring. And I really want to thank you, because the changes and advancements only happen because there are passionate people like you driving them, So thank you. And just want to thank everyone for listening to us today. Liz and I could talk for hours. We'll probably stop recording now and can continue talking for hours. But thank you so much for joining us. And please do hook up with Liz, get her communications, and you can just learn more and more about how normal gene therapies are, so that when they become available, we can all be really excited. Thank you. So any parting words for us, Liz?
No, just keep watching this lady's podcast, because she's amazing and she's working with amazing scientists and people who are doing amazing things. And so you're in the right place.
I'm so lucky. Thank you so much.